Hello, 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 everyone. This is your host, Dr. Lynn J. Yes, it's your girl again here as we are here every Wednesday at 3 p.m. with this podcast called Emerge and Empower. What does that mean? I've emerged from a trauma, a situation. I have come away from something and I am here to talk about it, to share it, to serve my past notice that I am no longer on that street. I'm no longer in that block. I'm no longer in that city. And I am no longer called by that name. I no longer go by that name. So many of our guests have shared stories of their emergence, whether it's through marriage, health concerns, just life in general, or dealing with traumatic childhood or trauma during adulthood. So, what I would like you to do, call your girlfriend, call your friends, and tell them Dr. Lynn J is on with another segment of Emerge and Empower. I'm going to give you a moment to get yourself together. Pull in the audience as we are about to take off with today's episode that talks about anxiety. Stay tuned. Welcome to Emerge and Empower, the podcast where we delve into stories of resilience, triumph, and personal growth. I'm your host, Dr. Lynn J, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on this journey of empowerment. Each episode, we bring you inspiring conversations with individuals who have faced challenges head on, emerged stronger, and are now making a positive impact in their communities. Whether it's overcoming adversity, pursuing passions, or navigating the twists and turns of life, our guests share the valuable insights and lessons. No, na na na, oh na na na, something good is happening in this year. I don't know about you, but every year I said something good and I face it with positivity. Amen. I face it with positivity, and that is my attitude in the new year. That no matter what comes, every day, every week, every month, every year, keep pushing, keep moving, and keep showing up. I want to be on the front row seat of my life. What about you? Now, let me introduce our guest on today. Her name is Toni Lashaun Wortherly, is a multi-talented artist hailing from Jacksonville, Florida, right here in our beautiful South Florida. A dynamic singer, songwriter, accomplished author, engaging speaker, and dedicated educator. Toni's life is centered around her profound relationship with Jesus Christ. Through her original music, compelling writing, and inspirational speaking engagement, she embodies the richness of connection, spreading hope and encouragement. Toni is particularly passionate about engaging with girls and women on topics such as mental health and wellness, navigating the journey of singleness, and redefining life after divorce. Her mission is rooted in boundless love of Jesus with humility while authentically shining his light with unwavering integrity. I would like for you to welcome Toni to the podcast at this time. Ooh,
Hello,
welcome.
everyone. Hello. Thank you
Welcome,
for having
Toni.
me.
Yes, welcome to Emerge and Empower. We're excited to hear what your experience is and what God has gifted you, and you have turned your pain into purpose. Now, we live in a society where we might not talk about anxiety. We don't talk about a lot of things. We think it's taboo, and if somebody go through it, we tell them get over themselves. We find all kind of things. We tell them to go pray, yada 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 yada. Now, y'all know me. I'm not on about cliche. All right. I don't like people hitting with a cliche. Why don't you just do? Yes, I know we do have to pray, but there are things that we used to also have to do. Not everything we can just pray them out. We have to walk people through the process. So, as we are about to start, and Toni is on the seat here, she'll be driving during this segment as she share her story. Toni, go ahead and let your guests, friends, everybody know you are on Emerge and Empower.
Hello, everybody, all my Toni Lashaun music fans and those who are fans of the book Pray While You Pray. I'm your author, Toni Lashaun Wortherly. Go ahead and hop on and watch this broadcast, Dr. Lynn J's Emerge and Empower, because this is about to be so good. I don't want to sound cocky, but it is a message that people really, truly need. I am on a mission. So get your girlfriends, get your kids, get whoever needs to hear this message, whoever that anxious person is in your life, get them on to watch this show.
Amen, amen, amen. You heard it, you heard it, you heard it. And it's none other than Toni. Now, Toni, before we do anything else, let us introduce, tell us who is Toni in a nutshell before we go through the processes and the things that she went through in life. Let's start with Toni, the little girl. What did Toni want to be growing up?
When I was a little girl, for most of my childhood, starting at about age 8, I wanted to be an attorney. And in addition to that, I wanted to be a wife and I wanted to be a mom. That was my dream from childhood. And I carried that dream all the way through high school and all the way through college and into law school. That is who I wanted to be. There was one brief year in there where I took a break from that dream and I wanted to be a rock star and a fashion designer. And if I'm being honest, I'm kind of doing those things right now, but we'll get into that later.
That is so cool. I don't think I've ever, you see it on commercials or you see people on TV say, yeah, I wanted to be a rock star, but to actually meet someone in person in another in the embodiment of Toni who says she want to be a rock star, I'll say rock on, rock on. That is so fun, and that tells me that you are a bubble person. You're bubbly. You have laughter. You have joy. Now, was it always so? Because we're gonna get into this here. Was it always so? Were you always confident?
No, absolutely not. Um, I grew up as a kind of an antisocial child.
Hmm.
It's the famous stories of me screaming my head off if anybody was trying to deal with me except for my mom when I was
Hmm.
little are rampant throughout my family. There's plenty of picture proof of me just like wriggling and screaming if anybody was trying to hold me but my mom.
Hmm.
And then even throughout like elementary school and middle school, junior high, I did not have a whole lot of friends. When I did get friends, I tended to be bossy. We would call that leadership now, not
Yeah.
not bossy, but I tended to want to run the group and construct it in the way that I wanted it to go. And I know that that was now looking back, that that was as a result of my insecurities and
Right.
my lack of confidence.
Hmm.
So, that I have not always been a confident person. It's interesting for you to call me bubbly. That is such a recent part of my personality. Um, I have been I've noticed it more and more. I'm so introverted. I am a shy introvert. I'm like the textbook for introversion.
Wow.
But when I'm talking about something that
Right.
I'm passionate about, or when
Yes.
I'm with the people that I'm comfortable speaking
Right.
with, then I feel like that's when my real true personality
Well, I'm
comes
glad you're
out.
comfortable with me on the show because what I saw was I'm happy. I'm loving life. That's what I saw, and
Yeah.
and that's what I pulled on, and I believe that we all have all of these in us. God created us to have all of this happy, joy, everything. every every emotion we experience. Some people just are more so, you know,
Right.
upfront. You know, when you're introverted, you could be introverted and still bubbly, but sometimes people are deeply introverted where they just blend in. Like you had to know that they were there. You know, they're like extreme, extreme, extreme. And so life also causes that. Environment causes that.
Hmm.
Confidence in oneself. There's so much that causes people to be reserved. That causes, you know, we could just list so much as to why people like me. I always consider myself a extroverted person, but there are times that I'm inverted. Like
Yeah.
if I haven't met you before, I'm reserved. I'm step back. I'm watching, you know. And if I feel the caution in the wind and my discernment is saying, this person isn't.
Mhm.
I'm watching you. So you would think like, wow, she's supposed to be boring. She's so serious. She's so strict. But I'm watching. I'm learning. You understand, to see, you know, because the person you're showing me, that's not what I really see. So I'm like, yeah, let's see. So, you know, we all have those moments. We all have those moments. But of course, when you get on a topic that you so love, you
Yes.
know, it's like, woo, I'm here. I'm ready. Let's do this. So that's really good. So let's just get right into it. All right. So let's get into the question as to, can you share a bit about your personal experience with anxiety and how it has impacted your life?
So I've been dealing with anxiety for as long as I can remember, but to give just a glimpse of what that's like in everyday life and how it impacts relationships, I'm going to tell a story.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
when I was in my second year of law school, it was after I got divorced. I was seeing a guy. It was spring break. We made plans. I was going to visit some family, and he was going to meet me while he was on spring break before he got there. And so I got to where we were supposed to meet, and he wasn't there. And I called, and he didn't answer. I called his house. This was, people still had landlines. I
Right.
called his house. He didn't answer. I called his cell phone. He didn't answer. And I waited and I waited. And then I just kept calling and I started to
Mm-hmm.
panic and I kept calling and I kept calling over and over and over again. And
Mm-hmm.
one time I called his house and his roommate picked up and was like, "He's not here. Stop calling." And leave us alone. I'm trying to
Wow.
sleep. And I was like, I'm worried that something happened to him.
Right.
And he hung up on me. And so I kept calling his cell phone through the night. Eventually, it just went straight to voicemail. It was no longer
Wow.
ringing. And my mind went to all these different places, like he's dead on the
Mm-hmm.
side of the road,
Right.
just horrific places. I'm like, I don't even know where he is between where he was and where we're
Right.
supposed to be. Like, who do I call? And I just, I was up just racked with worry for the entire night. And
Mm-hmm.
I maybe got a couple of hours of sleep. And then finally the next day, he called and I was like, "Where have you been?" And
Mm-hmm.
instead of recognizing that I was this very concerned
Right.
and caring person, he called me crazy.
Wow.
And he was like, "What you're doing is crazy." I didn't realize that I had between his house and
Mm-hmm.
his cell phone called over 50 times.
Wow. Wow.
I just got into a panic spiral and I just kept repeat dialing, repeat dialing, repeat
Wow.
dialing. So when I got back from that spring break, I went to
Mm-hmm.
see my therapist. I had already been in therapy, just dealing with some of the stuff before my ex-husband and I broke up, and then the aftermath of that. I was
Mm-hmm.
already in therapy. I had already been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, but
Okay.
this was like an extreme thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm telling my therapist this story, and his
Uh-huh.
eyes are just getting bigger and bigger
Bigger.
and bigger. And he goes, "I need to get you to a psychotherapist
Wow.
immediately." And I was like, "What is wrong with me? Like, I know that I have this disorder." It hadn't really been explained to me
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
um, in great detail. It just was, there is sometimes a chemical imbalance in your brain. And so you're
Mm-hmm.
going to have more worry, more anxiety than other people. So
Right.
I went to see the psychotherapist. I told her the story. I told her some other stories, answered all of her questions.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when we decided with my team of therapists and myself that it was time for me to go beyond just talk therapy
Right.
and to take medicine because I needed something to help me get back in control of that anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
For people who are not familiar, generalized anxiety disorder is not regular old anxiety. There are several
Mm-hmm.
anxiety disorders. It's a mental health condition. It's characterized by excessive and persistent worry. So when I say I've been worried since I was a child, I
Right.
literally mean that. Like, worry has been a constant in my life from the time that I have memories. I have memories of worrying about things.
Worrying.
It's excessive, it's persistent, it's affects your daily life, it affects your
Mm-hmm.
relationships, and it's usually disproportionate to what the actual situation is. For
Mm-hmm.
example, many of us have had a situation where someone comes to us and says, "Hey, I need to talk to you."
Right.
Right? Okay. For a normal person, that might cause a little bit of anxiety, like, oh, what do we need to talk about?
Right. Right.
For a person with generalized anxiety disorder, if you say, I
Mm-hmm.
need to talk to you, and you give me no other context,
Right.
my mind jumps to the worst
Worse.
possible consequence of that talk. Like, if it's
Yeah.
my boss and he walks by and says, "Hey, Worthley, I need to talk to you later,"
Right.
I'm like, I'm getting fired. Like,
Right.
I need to start looking for a new job because
Mm-hmm.
why does he need to talk to me? Like, what is going on? So
Right.
my
Right.
mind tends to go to the catastrophic. There's a lot of
Worst case scenario.
catastrophizing, absolute worst case scenario.
Wow.
And the other thing with generalized anxiety as opposed to regular anxiety, there's usually a situation that causes it,
Mm-hmm.
something, normal where we have to public speak, we have to perform in public, we
Right.
have a change in our life status, our job, our relationship, our
Mm-hmm.
finances. Generalized anxiety disorder, the worry is not tied to a
To any.
situation or a scenario, and it can come from seemingly nowhere. There have
Wow.
been times when I am just driving,
Mm-hmm.
minding my business,
Right.
and all of a sudden I start seeing catastrophic event after
Mm-hmm.
event after event. And I get to where I'm going and I don't even know how I got there
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because the entire time I was driving, I was trying to battle these anxious
Wow.
thoughts that I'm having.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it also caused a lot of insomnia,
I'm
lots of
sure.
sleepless
I'm sure.
nights.
Because worry do keep you awake.
Yes, lots of insomnia, which leads to
Mm-hmm.
fatigue, which leads to all kinds of other health things. In
Mm-hmm.
case anyone's wondering, I did become a lawyer. I did pass the bar, but I could not
Yes.
continue to be a lawyer. I only practiced
Wow.
for 3 years because my anxiety led to physical health problems too. I had a lot of
Wow.
gastrointestinal issues that were anxiety induced, and it just was not good for my
Mm-hmm.
physical health. So I
Right.
transitioned from being an attorney into being an educator.
Wow. Yeah, because what people don't realize is when you're worrying, and the stress of the worrying is taking a toll on you physically, right?
Yes.
And on top of that, with insomnia, it also adds fatigue, which actually is just making the situation even worse.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? Because you're already worried, you're not sleeping, you have lack of sleep. Now your brain is actually even more heightened. You'd understand to worst case scenario, you're already tired, you're going through the motions. So it just keeps piling and piling and piling. And there are times I'm sure you had crash low moments where it took a toll,
Oh,
it
yeah.
brought you down, right? And so, yeah, and that's why we see where the Bible talks about be anxious for nothing, because
Yeah.
anxiety is worry, and worry adds sickness, and sickness brings another problem, and it just keeps going on. One thing, it's like a domino effect. It keeps going and going and going. So let's talk about some of the misconceptions about anxiety that you have personally encountered?
So, some of the misconceptions. One is anxiety is just being nervous.
Mm-hmm.
They are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anxiety, nervousness is a symptom of anxiety,
Right.
right? That you're nervous about something. And I even like I often tell my students, I'm like, if you're not nervous before you're doing something, I don't know that you really care about the outcome of that thing. Like everybody should
Right.
experience like some little level of nervousness.
Right.
Anxiety is not nervousness.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety is telling you something terrible is going to happen,
Happen.
and not, oh, I'm going to embarrass myself in front of the class. Like, I'm going to
Right.
pass out. I'm going to faint. I'm going to hit my head and I'm never going to gain consciousness again.
Mm-hmm.
My parents
Mm-hmm.
are going to have to
Yeah.
decide whether or not to pull the plug on me after I hit my head on the corner of the table because I passed out because I was nervous about speaking. That's anxiety. Nervous
Yeah.
about speaking with butterflies in your tummy, that's normal.
Right.
Everybody gets that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is that anxiety is a choice, or that it's a sign of weakness. It is not a choice. It is not a sign of weakness.
No.
Anxiety disorders, if a person has an anxiety disorder, there are so many factors that go into
Mm-hmm.
that. There's biological factors, there's
Yeah.
environmental factors, there's psychological factors. And so it's not that the person is just choosing to be anxious, but I will say,
Mm-hmm.
there is healing. It's available if you want it, and you have
Right.
to acknowledge
That's the
that you
first.
need that before you can get to that step.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, people think that anxiety is visible, like that you can see it, that it is, it's fidgeting and it's panicking and it's breathing quickly and it's whatever. Um, I was having panic attacks like for a
Mm-hmm.
very long time before I even knew that that's what you called them.
Right.
It sounds crazy to say now, but I went through a vast part of my life thinking that I
Mm-hmm.
had a heart problem and did not tell anybody,
Wow.
because
Wow.
I would get these like heart palpitations where my heart was beating
Mm-hmm.
so fast it felt like it was skipping beats and I couldn't
Right.
catch my breath. And I was suffering through that by myself. Well, let me back up a little. Not by myself, because I would pray through it, but I did not like.
You didn't tell anyone.
This is when I was a teenager. This is when I was in college. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
tell the person that I was dating at the time. I didn't tell my siblings. I just was like, here I am thinking I'm having a heart attack and I'm
Right.
18, 19 years old. But once it subsided, then I kind of sat back.
Right.
Nobody can see that from the outside. Nobody can see that your chest is so tight that you can't breathe. And more
Mm-hmm.
so than that, nobody can see these thoughts that you're having
Right.
that are paralyzing you. What people see from the outside is, and I've gotten this a lot in my life, and it doesn't help that I'm introverted, is, oh, she's uppity and she's standoffish and she's aloof and she's, this or that adjective or synonym of
Right.
being antisocial. And it's not that, it's that I am in a constant conversation in my head.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many times, like I explained with the driving, that I don't even know what's going on around me. So outside, you might see standoffish, aloof. You might see what is where I am now, which is high functioning,
Right.
which you may think absolutely nothing is wrong in my life, because for certain parts of my life, that was my goal, to make sure that no one knew that anything was happening with me. So I
Mm-hmm.
was a perfectionist and I was a people pleaser. And I wanted to make sure that on the outside, everything looked amazing, because on the
Right.
inside, things were going absolutely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
those are some of the things that people um, think of anxiety, like you're just nervous, you're choosing to be that way, you're weak, you don't look like you're anxious.
Right.
Like you have no idea what's going on in
Exactly.
somebody's
Exactly.
brain on
Mm-hmm.
a day-to-day basis. I
Yeah.
have to remind myself of that. I mean, I'm around teenagers 5 days
Right.
a week.
Mhm.
They say something and I'm ready to just like snap back. And then I had to take a step back and think, okay, what is actually going on in their
Right.
mind? Or they do a certain behavior. And I'm like, why did they do that?
Right. Right.
Like, what is actually
Mhm.
causing that?
Yes.
So, there's a lot of misconceptions out there that lead people to believe that anxiety is not a real issue. And
Right.
unfortunately, because of that, people who battle anxiety don't speak up about
That's
it
it. Don't talk about it. Yeah.
because there's such a stigma of it being a weakness,
Right.
of it being a choice,
Right.
of it being easy to get over.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. You said a lot, and that's why this is the new word I'm using more often. I find is people are suffering from invisible
Mhm,
conditions. So
mhm,
for someone to say you don't look, what are they comparing with? What did you see to show that somebody was anxious? Because when someone is nervous, nervous is, we get nervous. I'm a speaker. There are times I have confidence, but there are times that I'm nervous, like, wow, I'm not sure. Maybe I should have researched more. You have a lot of things on your mind. Will they
mhm,
receive me? You have all of these things that happen. But then once you start talking, you get over it. It's over. But anxiety is a whole different scale and on itself, because now you're thinking, I'm going to be up there. The worst thing is going to happen, And so the whole time, you're in that worst case scenario. And I've met people who always are more pessimistic. That's almost like a pessimistic trait of thinking, oh my God, the worst thing is going to happen.
mhm,
Now, I'm going back to when you had those calls and you were doing those calls, and you didn't even realize you called for
mhm,
50. You were already worried about this person, which was genuinely sincere, but you added that now with being anxious, and it took it extreme. So now they're like, man, she's crazy. That's what they're saying. Something's wrong with her. Like, why did she call like 50 times? Like, get the picture, get the point. All right. And so now you're being said, oh, that's the stigma now. She's crazy. So
mhm,
people probably at school are saying, what, don't even mess with her. She's crazy. Hence the experience, blah, 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 blah. And now you already was dealing, you know, that was a moment for you that this happened. All right. But it didn't happen right away, right? Because you didn't get the help right away. This is eventually later that you got the help and got the diagnosis to realize that this was the case that happened to you. And I'm sure there's people who are watching here today. Maybe you were silent like she said she was for years. Thinking that she had first of all, if I think I'm gonna have a heart attack, I'm gonna tell somebody. She didn't even feel she wanted to tell somebody what was going on. Because to feel like you have an heart attack is like somebody's got to know. Because you're going through this over and over and over and over. Maybe you think, well, it's gonna pass and I'll be fine. And then it comes again. But again, you still even afraid to tell that something is going on, because now the fear would not only be, okay, then if I have a heart attack, then I have to go deal with the symptoms and the
mhm.
doctors. And so you thinking everything is, you thinking it worst case scenario. I'm just like, yeah, let me just keep this to myself,
Yeah.
you know, and
I
all
don't
this
want to be a
while,
burden on anybody.
right,
That's the
right,
other thing is
right,
the constant fear that you're going to become someone's burden.
right.
And I didn't want to be a burden on anyone.
Wow, wow, wow. That is totally amazing. So then, how do you differentiate between normal levels of stress and anxiety, and when does anxiety become a significant concern? So how do you differentiate the two?
So, like I said before, everybody experiences some level of anxiety when
Mm-hmm.
there's a life change going on. When you, like we mentioned before, public speaking, like
Right.
everybody experiences some level of anxiety. It's
Mm-hmm.
connected to a specific event or
Mm-hmm.
situation or circumstance.
Right.
And that's normal. And so if it's just a normal, like my leg is shaking, I've got butterflies in my stomach, and
Right.
then after the event passes, it goes away.
Right.
That's okay,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Stress. My sister is actually a mental health counselor, and I remember she gave a talk once where she was like, stress is not always bad. Like, it's branded as something that's bad, but there's good
Right.
stress and there's bad stress. Like, it's just your body's response to
To it.
demands or pressures that you have going on. And
Right.
so it can be bad stress if you, like, start overeating, or you
Right.
start like,
Mm-hmm.
not sleeping. But good stress if it like keeps you focused, or
Right.
like when you're a student and you have that assignment's due and you're like
Right.
stressed out, it's due on this deadline, and
Mm-hmm.
that is keeping you focused and that's helping you to concentrate.
Right.
With an anxiety disorder, and there's different ones. I have generalized anxiety disorder, there's social anxiety disorder, there's
Mm-hmm.
panic disorders, there's other disorders. With
Right.
those, the difference is the intensity and the duration.
Oh, huh.
Okay, so with regular anxiety and regular stress, you're in a situation,
Mm-hmm.
you're feeling nervous about it, you're stressed about it, it happens, you're done with it.
Right.
When you should start becoming concerned is when that thing passes,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still obsessing over it. Or it's started to lead to other thoughts that are not even related to
Do it.
that situation,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or that you have this anxiety, anxiousness, stress, worry, and there's not even a situation that it's tied to. Like,
Right.
nothing has actually happened. You
Right.
just all of a sudden have a feeling of dread that someone in your family is
Mm-hmm.
going to die or be hurt, or
Right.
something is going to happen, and you see very clearly this scenario, or you hear very clearly this scenario,
Mm-hmm.
and it is absolute reality to you, but there is no evidence or indication that that is actually going on.
Happen. Mm-hmm.
That is the difference. Anxiety disorders have an impact on your functioning.
Mm-hmm.
They paralyze you. They make it hard for you to work. They make social situations difficult. They make
Difficult.
relationships difficult. Regular anxiety and stress don't do that.
Right.
And like I said, with regular anxiety and stress, you can usually, like, once it's over, it's done with, you're on to the next thing. You're not
Right.
thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But with anxiety, um, that is a disorder that you should be concerned with.
Right.
It will take some sort of treatment
Right.
in order to get your life back on balance.
Got you. Got you. Now, you said you were married.
Mhm.
Now, do you think the condition that you were in result of the separation, or was it just normal things? What? Because usually when things happen, people would say, "Here's why we're not together," or "Here's why we're not together." And I know with being anxious and anxiety, now this is gonna put you in a place where we blame ourselves regularly, right? We already
Mhm.
blaming ourselves when things go wrong. All right. So here it is. You're faced in this situation, and you're in a personal level, in a relationship. How was that?
So I've had half my life
Mm-hmm.
to look back and analyze everything that happened in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm
Mm-hmm.
46 now, and I got divorced when I was 23. So
Oh, that was young. That was a
it's
long time
literally
ago.
been half my life.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, I know this to be a fact.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety caused me to get married. Okay.
Wow. Wow.
Um, and here's how. I told you before,
Mm-hmm.
my goals, my dreams growing
Right.
up were to be an attorney, to be a wife, and to be a
Right.
mother.
Mm-hmm.
Through middle school, high school, I didn't really get a whole lot of attention from guys.
Mm-hmm.
I had one boyfriend from my senior year and my
Mm-hmm.
early college years. We broke up because we probably never should have dated in the first place. We were
Mm-hmm.
much better as friends. We're still friends to this day.
Okay. That's good.
Um, but after him, I just had like different people in my life, but nobody was really sticking to be the person that I thought I might marry.
Right.
When I met my ex-husband, like a few weeks in, he said he wanted to marry me.
Mm-hmm.
And then anxiety kicked in and told me, if you don't marry this man, you will never be married and you'll never
Oh,
be
wow.
a wife, and no one else will ask you, and you're going to be old and you're going to be lonely, and none of your dreams are going to come true.
Wow.
And so, even though before we got married, several people tried to talk me out of it, and I saw
Mm-hmm.
several red flags, in my
Right.
mind, this was my one opportunity,
One chance.
my one chance. And if I didn't do this, I was never going to get married. So there was a part of me that knew going into it, this is not a good idea. But the louder part of me said, well, now you have all these people here. And if you don't go through with it, you're going to look like a failure. And failure to me at that time in my mind was fatal, because I needed everyone in my life to think that I had everything in my life together. So I got married, and I stayed married for 20 months. Like, I sound like I'm describing a toddler. Meet my marriage. It's 20 months old. Like, and probably 12 of those 20 months were miserable. And yes, anxiety played a lot into that. I started law school soon after we got married. So there
Uh-huh.
was the extra added pressure of
Mm-hmm.
that. We moved cities away from our family. There were
Mm-hmm.
times when I was separated from my family, and that made me more stressed out. And there were just a lot of situations that went
Right.
on. I own my part in it.
Right.
I have apologized
It
to
takes
him for
two.
my
Yeah.
part in it. And he had his part in it, and ultimately, I tell people, the Bible said that it was okay that we got a divorce, so you can
Mm-hmm.
infer from that what you want to, but
Right.
it
Right.
was for a biblical reason that we
Mm-hmm.
ended our
Well,
marriage.
that's clear. That's clear. That's clear. At least you have that as a, what do you call it, a justifiable cause
Correct.
for that. But I like what you just said about fear being fatal, because a lot of people do things out of fear. All
Mhm.
right. Some people get married just with the same scenario that you just used. Well, I might as well get married. This might be the only person who ever loved me, or the first person who ever loved me, the first person who ever showed they care, so I better do right because I might not have the chance. Now, it's just more extreme for you because you had anxiety. So it seems like it's going to happen or else it's never going to happen. But a lot of people have done things out of fear of tomorrow, fear of the unknown. I don't know will it come, right? I
Mhm.
don't know what life turn will be. And as you say this, I'm pulling from it personally, because why do I say that? I've gone through a traumatic childhood, right? All of my life has been trauma after trauma after trauma. So by time as I'm 13 years old, everyone who ever showed that they cared for me hurt me,
Mhm.
right? That's just how it went. So, of course, the first person who came into my life that showed that they care and everything, I'm like, okay, this is it. Because it was fear of, I better hold on to this because I don't
Mhm.
know what tomorrow is going to bring. Now, the first couple of years, almost the first 20 years, like I say, it's faith, 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 faith over fear, faith over fear. It kept me faith over fear, faith over fear. Took me through 20 years. Year 22, I'm like, wait a minute. I did this out of fear. And now I'm here. It's not like we're
Mhm.
rhyming, but now I'm here and I'm dealing with this. And I'm looking at all the wrong reasons, all the things that was in my head logically to make it be so. And I realize I'm not living. So fear is fatal because it
Mhm.
causes us to make decisions, and we justify those decisions. All right. For you, you justified it as, you know what, that's might be it. It's over. It's done. So for you, it was the end. Like, this is it or not. There's no other chance. There's no other opportunity. You understand what I'm saying? So there are people on here, and I hope this is helping you, because you've been operating from a place of fear all of your
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
Therefore, It is necessary to come from that place because God never created us to be in the place of fear or operating out of
Mhm.
fear when He wants us to move joyously without anxiousness, nervousness, any of that, because we love to quote, "For I know the plans I have for you." If we listen to the plans, none of it is about fear, anxiety, all of the things that we put up with. He wants the best, all
Right.
right? The best for us. So I'm glad that you shared that. The reason why I asked that question, because viewers are going to say, well, she was married, maybe that's what pushed it. Yes, you had those situations going on, but in truth, the biblical reason was in the end really what it was. Okay. And we have to take part in the parts that we have. I had a
Mhm.
earlier segment where the women said, "I'm going to own up to my part, what I did, what they did, and all of that." And I'm glad that you look back on that and see that. But in the beginning, when you were looking back, even though it was there, how was the looking back? Because now you're years later. In the
Right.
beginning of looking back, did that add more to how you were feeling already?
So in the beginning, when I was looking back,
Mm-hmm.
mainly what I felt was I never should have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so then that added another level of anxiety that now,
Mm-hmm.
because I did that and because I feel like I got married in
Mm-hmm.
disobedience to what God's will was for my life because I that wasn't his best for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um then I started to feel like now I've messed up the plan and I don't know if I'll ever be able to get that back.
Right.
And I'm never going to have that life that I saw myself having. So that same fear just
Mm-hmm.
crept right back in.
Right.
When you're talking earlier, I was thinking, I've heard my pastor say it, and I don't know if he got it from somewhere else, but
Mm-hmm.
when people are depressed,
Yeah.
it's usually because they're focused on the past.
Yeah.
And I've definitely dealt with my seasons of depression. I'm grateful that that is not a mental health issue that I have to deal with regularly,
Thanks be to
but
God.
I've dealt with seasons of depression.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're anxious, like you said, it comes from fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
When you're
Yeah.
anxious, it's because you're hyper focused on the
Mm-hmm.
future and trying to predict and trying to orchestrate and trying to
Right.
coordinate the best outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where does that come from? It
Right.
comes from I must not trust God.
Yeah.
Because if I trust God, I know that no matter what my actual situations are that are facing me,
Mm-hmm.
He's going to work it together for His glory and for my good.
For your good.
Right?
Yes.
Does that
Yes.
mean that my life is going to be all peaches and cream and everything's going to be perfect and I'm never going to get sick? No, that's not what that means. That is such a common
No.
misconception about having a relationship with Christ that your
Yes.
whole life is going to be like in this, rose-colored tapestry. No,
Yeah.
God promised through Jesus, there will be trouble. It's in there. Read the book.
Yes.
It's in there.
Trials and
you know,
tribulations.
he gave away the ending. There will be trouble. Okay. Spoiler alert. It's going to happen. It happens
Yes.
in different measures, right? But we still have to trust
Right.
that God is going to get us through that. And I actually had a conversation the other day with a friend, and she
Mm-hmm.
was like, I don't understand why God put me through this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And a few minutes later, she was telling me about how she was sharing her testimony with other people. I said, that's why, sweetie.
That's
That's
why.
why.
That's
That's why
why.
you went through that. That's why
Yeah.
I went through the stuff that I went through. I
Yeah.
could get mad at God. I have been mad at God for
Mm-hmm.
different things. I've been
Yeah.
like, why did you make me this way? You knit
Right.
my brain together. Why did you put this in there? you
Right.
know, I've had those moments. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like
We all
I
have.
tried to
We
do
all have.
things. I tried to follow the rules. That didn't work. I broke the rules. That didn't work. I don't know what
Said.
you want me to do.
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Right. But I went through those things because there have been people that have come into my life, person after person after person,
Mm-hmm.
who's been hurting in the way that I was hurting,
Right.
who's been suffering in the way that I've suffered. And
Yes.
I'm able to share with them
Yeah.
how God fixed it,
That's it.
how he brought me out,
That's
how
it.
he helped me to get to a place where I could admit something is wrong
Yes.
and I need healing and I need you and I
Mm-hmm.
need to not be scared about what other people are going to think about my healing process. When I
Mm-hmm.
first started going to therapy in college, I told no one. Okay. One,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Christian. Two, I'm black. We don't do that.
You can say that again.
So nobody knew I was in therapy at first.
Right.
I just found out from our wellness center that they had free therapy. I was suffering from insomnia. I knew
Mm-hmm.
something was going on
Mm-hmm.
with my thought life
Right.
and something needed to be done about it. So I didn't tell people for a long time. When I decided to start taking medicine, I told two people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was just so that they would know what was going on. One of them was my mother.
Yes.
I just did not, I was so scared of what people were going to think that I was
Mm-hmm.
afraid to get help.
Yes. The fear of
So I
rejection.
just suffered for years and was like, you know what? My brain was telling me, you are weak and you're choosing to be this way, and all kinds of lies.
Wow. 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 That is a lot there in itself. Um, we all deal with some type of fear, but when it goes on an extreme level, as such, I mean, it's like even hard to imagine an individual going through that alone. I mean, it's like I understand, and I say this all the time, even when I bring the word about Jesus leaving the 99 to save the one. And I'm always looking at the state of the one. What is that one going through that he left the 99 to go through them? And every day I'm learning there's different scenarios of what this one is going through and why he felt it was necessary to go in. You know what? Because you put yourself in a corner and separate yourself from everyone in fear, rejection. You know, all of this is on that causes people to go. Because I notice that when a lot of people go through, they go through alone and they go through silent. And that is really the plan of the enemy, because he don't want you to get help. He wants you to stay in that darkness, to stay in that place until you disappear. You
Mm-hmm.
understand me? Because that is the plan. So instead of, and I'm saying this to our viewers, because you heard what she said, instead of going into yourself and being alone, tell somebody. And the worst thing is when you think people should know, you cannot tell when someone is going through. You know, not everything. Oh, didn't you see the sign? No. There are a lot of people who went through stuff. There weren't any signs.
Because
Amen.
we are
So,
working very hard for you to not see those signs.
exactly. That's the whole thing. So if someone was always, outgoing, hey, I'm gonna see you, and I can understand where you went back when the person said that they were showing up and they didn't show up, because now you cared so much to understand what was going on, so that you can make sure, find a, hey, can you find out if so and so is okay? Because everybody needs somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Even if someone was to be buried into the ground in the cemetery, you need somebody to put you in the ground. We all need somebody at every point of our life. And going through it alone is not the way to go. It's not the way to go. All right. I know some people say, I don't want to know because I don't want people's pity. I don't want this. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want that. There's so many reasons why people are not. But again, it is good. Like you were saying, there's bad stress and there's good stress. I'd rather have the good stress because they care, because they acknowledge, because they're checking in on you, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about some of the practical strategies, for example, techniques that the listeners can use to manage anxiety on a day to day basis. What did you do? Let's talk about some of the practical things that you can do to manage anxiety day to day.
So this has really been a recent development in the last 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
since meeting my new therapist. I talked to Jesus, I talked to my mom, I talked to my sister. My mom and my sister were like, "You need to talk to a therapist. Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
help me find a good therapist." So, so in my therapy sessions and being with him, I finally got some of these practical steps. And then after that, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I am itching to share these with other people. So I
Okay.
used to say that I struggled with anxiety, and now I feel like I'm in a position where I'm ready to battle anxiety. Like it's a fight, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
ready to take up arms.
That's it.
And
That's it.
so I have three steps for battling anxiety. The
Mm-hmm.
first one is listen to your anxiety. One of the things that I loved to do was
Mm-hmm.
to try to drown out the noise in my head and not
Mm-hmm.
actually listen to what it was saying. In
Wow.
therapy, my therapist made me sit with my thoughts. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't want to do that. And he was like, why? And I was like, because I'm afraid of them and I don't want to hear what they're saying. Like, I
Right.
don't want to think about what I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
about. But he made me
Right.
do it. And in doing that, when I actually listened to what I was thinking, I heard how asinine my anxiety was. Like the
Wow.
thoughts that were actually coming into my head were so ridiculous and outlandish and unlikely to happen. And then I
Right.
started to think, when in my life has my anxiety ever said something was going to happen and
And it
it did?
happened.
Never.
Yeah.
It's never happened that way. Have
Yeah.
bad things happened? Yes, but not the way that's been whispered into my ear,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
the way that's been whispered into my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't
Mm-hmm.
happened like that. I call anxiety my broke best frenemy. Not exactly a friend, not exactly an enemy. It's
Right.
always there, like
Friend
it's
of me.
constant, like a friend, right?
Yeah.
But literally contributes nothing and costs a lot. So it's like a boat broke best friend,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I have to listen to it, because if I don't listen to it, then I don't notice how ridiculous of scenarios it's coming up with, how
Mm.
extreme the scenarios that are it's coming up with. So the
Right.
second step after listening to it is learning from it.
Right.
Okay, this big, beautiful, intricately made, delicately made, complex brain of mine has a superpower. She is extremely creative.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now,
Mm-hmm.
let me take this very creative and ridiculous thought that my mind has and let me break that down and let me notice what that is, because our feelings, our anxiety, and any other feeling we have,
Mm-hmm.
our feelings are not our identity. Our feelings
Say
are
that.
indicators.
Indicators. Yes.
They are indicators of something that is going on. So when you actually take the time to listen and learn and notice, what is it that is contributing to this thought that is detrimental to my life, or this
Mm-hmm.
thought pattern that's detrimental to my life right now,
Right.
peeling back the layers, what is actually causing it? In
Right.
this last session that I had with the last time period of time that I was going through therapy,
Mm-hmm.
what I realized was I had unresolved grief. I had several people that I was close to pass away in a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of changes that happened in my life, pre and post pandemic. And my life didn't look how I thought it would look at this point in my life. All of those were things that I needed to grieve.
Right.
But again, just like with anxiety, I the stigma is like you can't be in that for too long.
Right.
So
Right.
I repressed my grief and I repressed my grief. And what would happen is, people say grief comes in waves, but instead of
Yes.
it coming in a wave, it came in a tsunami. And my
Wow.
grief would actually absolutely knock me over. And I was literally not sleeping. Like I would take my daily naps, but at night I was getting no rest. I had sleep
Mm-hmm.
tests done. I went through all kinds of stuff and I
Wow.
was just suffering. And then finally, thank God for my mom. She was like, "You need to find a new therapist."
Right.
Like you need
It's
to,
true shit. That
you
you
need,
mean
just like
if
last week,
one
she was
isn't
like,
working,
"You need to take
like
a nap."
hello.
She
It's
was like,
true.
"You need to find a new therapist
It's
because
true.
I can talk to you and I know you're praying and I know that you're doing everything that you
Mm-hmm.
can think of, but you need to find a new therapist." I was absolutely adamant that I did not want to go back
Right.
on medication because I don't want to be dependent on medication. Some
Right.
people are at an extreme level where they do need to, if your doctor says you need to be on the
Mhm.
medication, you
Mhm.
need to be on the medication.
Right.
And so for the longest time, I was afraid to go to a therapist because I didn't want them to prescribe me medication. But at this point last year where I was like, can you just give me a pill? I
Right.
just want this to go away. Like, I don't want to deal with it. And my therapist said to me, no, if you want me to get rid of the problem, I'm not the right therapist for you. If you want me
Mhm.
to help you work through the problem and understand how to actually deal with it, then
Right.
I'm the right therapist for you. And I was like, okay, here we go. So so, like I said, he was exactly what I needed. I needed somebody that was just going to be
That's
very
it.
like frank and blunt
That's
with me
it.
and be like, listen,
That's
I
it.
can send you somewhere else if you want a pill, but if you want to actually
Right.
really deal with this and see what's, and so it took some weeks and some work, but we
Right.
finally got to the root of the thing and we learned from that anxiety what I was really dealing with
Mhm.
was feelings of abandonment that came from people close to me dying,
Yeah.
and the fear of abandonment, the fear of being alone,
Yes.
because I'm not married and I don't have children. And
Mhm.
I had not mourned the fact that that's what I thought my life would look like. And
Right.
that's not what it looked like. Because to me, it felt like if I was sad about it, that I wasn't being grateful
Right.
to God for the life that I do have, because I have a wonderful life. I
Mhm.
have nieces and nephews that are amazing. I have a job that is fulfilling. I
Mhm.
have a music career that's awesome. There's a lot of things that I have going on for me,
Right.
and it
Right.
just felt ungrateful to be like, God, I'm sad that this part isn't happening
Yes.
when
Yes.
he'd given me so much. But by burying that, I was just causing more and more problems. And that was exacerbating my
Right.
anxiety.
Anxiety.
So
Yeah.
the third step, once you listen to your anxiety and learn from your anxiety, is then you can work on
Work
limiting
on it.
your anxiety.
Yeah.
And you can limit your anxiety using grounding and gratitude. Grounding, there are different techniques. I like to use the five senses technique. So
Mhm.
anytime I feel like I'm going into like an anxious spiral,
Uh
or
huh.
maybe even feel a panic attack coming
Mhm.
on, you can use your five senses to bring you back to that place. I don't know if you remember earlier, I said sometimes when I get into that cycle of thought,
Mhm.
like I don't even know where I am, like I
Where you are.
disappear, like
Yes.
I check out. And
Yes.
so it grounding brings you back. So if you are with someone who's going through a panic, or if
Mhm.
you are going through a panic, the five senses that I use, I'll say, like, tell me five things you see in this room right now.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
Tell me four things that you hear going on around you.
Mhm.
Touch three things in this
Mhm.
room right now, right?
Yes.
What is your favorite taste? What is a taste that you like to taste?
Right. Right. Right.
Okay. What is the favorite smell that you have? If you walk
Mhm.
into a room and there had to be like your
Right.
favorite smell, what is it? And usually then that brings you back into the space of reality. Like, okay,
Good.
I'm back. That's the first
Good.
step. We got to get back.
Because now
Like, you
you're
got to get back
conscious.
into here, into
Yeah.
now. You got to experience now and be in now and not be in somewhere over there and
Right.
way beyond now and in the future and in other places. You have to
Mhm.
come back to now. And then once you get into the now, you can practice gratitude. Now, I will admit, there are days when my gratitude practice is kind of petty and I
Mhm.
start off real sarcastic. And I'm just like, thank you for waking me up. And thank you that I have a house. And thank you that,
Yeah.
but eventually, as your anxiety starts to come down, it
Right. Right.
becomes more genuine. And it's like, thank you, God, for getting me through this.
Exactly.
Thank you, God, for being here for me. Thank you, God, that you're constant, that I can count
Yes.
on you, that, when it's late at night and I'm panicking and I don't want to call anybody and wake them up and scare them
Right.
half to death, that I can talk to you and that
Mhm.
I can keep talking to you. Thank you that I can cry and that
Right.
I can scream and that you're not going to hate me and that you're
Yeah.
still going to love me. Thank
Yeah.
you that I'm yours.
Yes.
Once you identify like who you are and whose you are,
Gratitude is one of the best.
oh, gratitude.
Yes.
Be thankful. I used to be so afraid. You mentioned the verse earlier. It's on my shirt. I don't know if you can see Philippians 4:6. Be
Uh-huh.
anxious for nothing.
For
That
nothing.
verse used to haunt me because I thought, oh my gosh, I am the worst sinner of all sinners because I am anxious all the time.
Right. Right.
I was
Right.
anxious about this thing falling out of my ear, man.
Nobody's
It's
worried
just gonna
about
have to
that.
be on camera. So
Nobody's worried about that.
so I was concerned because I was anxious all the time and I would just hear that over and over again. Be anxious for nothing. And I was like, oh my gosh, Lord, forgive me because I'm anxious all the time. All these
Right.
things worried. I'm having all these worried thoughts. And this is why it's so important to know the word for yourself
For yourself. You must have enough.
and not just what you hear, because you hear people say, be anxious for nothing, but there is more to
There's
that
more
verse.
to that. Yes.
There's more to that, but there's a but there. It's like, oh, wait.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we
Yeah.
going with this? But in everything,
And everything.
with prayer and thanksgiving,
Mm-hmm.
make your requests known unto
Known.
God. Make your
Yes.
requests known. Everything,
Everything.
like
Everything.
everything, all the things, the big things, the small things, the
Mm-hmm.
things that you don't tell anybody
With
else. You don't tell
anybody.
your best friend. You don't tell your mama. God
Yep.
wants you to talk to him about those things,
That's
the
it.
ugly things,
Yes.
the
Yes.
nasty things, the terrible, I can't believe I had that thought, oh my gosh,
Oh,
things.
yes. Oh,
Because
yes.
nothing surprises him, but he just wants to love on us and he just
That's
wants to
it.
be close to us and he just wants to hold us in his care, but he wants it to be voluntary.
Yes.
He's not always going to just pull you into a bear hug and be like, come here. you know,
It's
and
true.
that's,
It's so
I love
true.
that. God, like he doesn't force us to love
Yes.
him. He doesn't force us to come to him. It's
No. No.
voluntary.
Voluntary.
It's
Voluntary.
voluntary. And so we have to remember that in everything that we
Mm-hmm.
go through,
We
we can go to
must.
him. We have to go to him.
Yeah.
I can testify it's going to keep bothering you until you go to
You
him.
gotta go. You gotta go.
You can
Gotta go.
you can do like me. You can tell your mama, you can tell your sister, you can tell your best friend.
Yeah.
Until you go to him,
You gotta go.
it's going to bother you. You can tell your
That's it.
therapist.
That's it.
Until you go to
You
him,
gotta tell somebody.
it's going to bother you, right? I
Yes. Yeah.
can't just depend on my mom, my sister, my best friend, my therapist. I
Mm-hmm.
need Jesus first,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then through those people that he knows, I hear their voices, I trust their people. I joke with people all the time because, they say God speaks to you in a familiar voice.
Right.
And when I'm about to do something that I know I had no business doing,
Right.
the voice I hear is my daddy's. My actual earthly daddy. That
Yes.
is the voice that I hear, but it has much more of a like
Right.
heavenly tone to it, like Toni Lashaun. Now you know,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
So
it's true.
God will
It's
use the
true.
people around you who love you, who nurture
Right.
you, who care for you, but go to Him first. God's
Yes.
not a last resort. Go to
No.
Him first. There
Yes.
are 1 in 4 people in this world dealing with anxiety.
One in
1 in
four is
4.
a very big number. And that's why I say we do have to come back because there's got to be a part two. Who knows? We might go to part three because we cannot rush through this
Yeah.
topic. So, as the Lord would allow you, we need to revisit this. And I do not believe this is a one time, right? Because I've had segments where they had to continue, and this is one of them, all right? So, we have to continue because there's so much more to elaborate on. There's
Yeah.
so much more to bring forward. There's so many layers that we need to peel away. We cannot do it in just a segment, right? Just in this segment. So I'll say to you, stay tuned for part two. That's what I would say to you, because this has a lot and it's a wealth of information. But this is Tony's emergence.
Mhm.
Now, when somebody has emerged, there are layers that had to come off in order to get to where she is today, that she can talk to you on this podcast. All right. So, Toni, we are going to wrap it up. But before we do that, I want to mention these books that you have here. So, I'll put this first one on here. All right. All right. And this one, let's talk about this book.
This is the Don't You Worry devotional and journal. It is based on my song Don't You Worry, which is based on the verse I was just talking about, Philippians 4, 6, and
Hmm.
7.
Hmm.
This is my most popular song. I have two versions of it, but
Hmm.
this devotional and journal kind of guides you through feelings check-ins and how to
Hmm.
do them. And just some of the different stages of anxiety, the struggle of anxiety, how it sneak attacks you, but what the Savior has the ability to do to guide you out of that, and some strategies in dealing with anxiety. And then it also is a journal, so you can write out your thoughts and really confront and pay attention to what you are thinking, feeling, experiencing.
All right. We're going to elaborate that on part two a little bit more when we come back. And let's go to here. We have your devotions. This one.
Pray While You Pray is a book that I wrote for I really wrote it as my own personal journal for my journey into singleness after divorce and trying to
Hmm.
just figure out how to navigate that life in that
Hmm.
world when I thought that I would be a married person.
All
So
right.
the
So
original
it
book
accompanies
is
this
my
book, correct?
testimonies on that, and the devotions. Yeah, yes, they go together. And so the devotions are based on the scriptures that I used in the book Pray While You Pray. And they are the all of my books are available on Amazon. The Pray While You Pray devotions, as well as the Don't You Worry devotion. There's also a version of those on the YouVersion Bible app.
Wow, you version that says a lot. So Toni, we do thank you on today for being here on Emergent and Power. And we are truly blessed. And everyone, I'm saying this to you, look out for part two because there is so much. This is needed in our society. We didn't even get to the church phase of it, the spiritual sense of it,
Right.
and how
Yep.
people see it, because, there's got to be the churching part in that, the praying part in that. So there's a lot, how you trying to cast it out like it's demonic and all of that. There's so many layers. So I'm telling you to stay tuned for part two. Stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned, because there is more to this and we cannot bring it to you in one segment. So, Toni, before we closed off, let everyone know where they can find you. And also, before I even say where they can find you, what is a word that you would like to say to that individual today, whether it's a mother that's going through it with their children, or an individual who's been secretive about it through their whole life and haven't shared it to anyone? What Say a message to this person right now before we close out.
For the person who is suffering in silence, please understand that you are not alone. Like I said before, 1 in 4 people deal with anxiety. Less than half of those people seek treatment because
Hmm.
of their fear of a stigma. You're not alone. There are ways to deal with it. There are people who are willing to help you. God is on your side and he will help you through it. So please do not suffer alone.
Thank you, thank you. And now, where can they find you? Yes, they can find your books. The links will be in the bio where you can connect with Toni. All her links will be in there. But again, there are people who don't want to read; they want to hear it. And while you're saying it, they want to go look at the time. How can they find you?
You can find me at tonilashaunmusic.com. There are all of my music is there, access to my books, access to, I said I was a rock star and a clothing designer, access to my merchandise that I've designed based around my books.
Merch.
Um, you can find my social media there. Most social media, I'm Toni Lashaun Music or Toni Lashaun Christian Music. Yeah, and so tonilashaunmusic.com is where you can, like, a hub for finding everything to get to the books or get to any information or just get to uplifting music that will help you out there. I have playlists on there to kind of help people through rough times.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot on today. And Toni, we do want to thank you for being here on Emerge and Empower. And I do thank you for being a wonderful guest on today. And listen, stay tuned. Toni will be back. All right.
Thank you so much
So
for
much,
having me.
everyone. You're more than welcome. Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Toni. Thank you. All right, everyone. As you know, this has been Emerge and Empower podcast, and we had a wonderful segment. So, we will be coming back with part two because anxiety is very real in our society today, and there are many people that are dealing with the invisible condition. So, all of these segments are talking about different conditions that people have faced, and we're just going to target and try to bring in as much as possible. Now, if you have a story to tell, or there are certain topics that you would like to see us bring on this podcast, do let us know by sending us an email at emergeandempower@gmail.com. We also have a magazine, which is Emerge and Empower Magazine. We would like to do spotlights on individuals and also share their stories on our digital magazine. You have many opportunities to be a part of the podcast. Do you have an ad? Do you have something that you would like to share to the public audience? Reach out again at emergeandempower@gmail.com. And I want to thank you once again for being in the audience. God bless you and love you. Until next time.